You know that feeling when your world fractures, not with the scream, but with the silent, glowing pixel of a social media notification. My name is Alina Vance, and my fracture came in the form of a TikTok video. There was my niece, Chloe 16, with the bored, polished beauty of the terminally privileged, filming herself in what I recognized as my sister's Manhattan penthouse dressing room. The screen was a mosaic of designer handbags. Okay, so we're doing a closet purge, she drawled, holding up a Birkin. This one's so last season, but I guess someone will want it. The camera panned, and there I was, frozen in a framed photo on her vanity from a happier time. Chloe's manicured finger tapped the glass. Even my poor Aunt Alina, she sighed. A performance of fox sympathy so perfect it chilled my blood. She's, so embarrassed she can't afford real designer. She actually tried to convince me this Canal Street knockoff was vintage Prada last week. It's kinda sad. We try to help, but… She trailed off with a shrug that spoke of infinite, unbridgeable distance. The comments were a river of laughing emojis and… gee, that's so cringe. The humiliation was a white, hot brand pressed directly onto my soul. But the real ice entered my veins a week later, when a misdirected email landed in my inbox. It wasn't just Chloe's casual cruelty. It was a trust fund statement. Her trust fund, established with funds from my late mother's estate, an estate I was told had been decimated by medical debt, leaving me with nothing but a box of my mother's costume jewelry and a mountain of grief. The numbers on that PDF danced, a 7-figure ballad of stolen security. Stolen future, stolen love, the executor. My elegant, formidable older sister Victoria. The betrayal wasn't a knife in the back, it was a surgical, years-long dissection of my life, performed by the one person I thought was my anchor. I sat in my dim, quiet apartment. The rain streaking the windows like tears on a dirty pane. The glow of the screen the only light, and I understood. The pitying looks. The loans. That were crumbs from my own table. The constant, subtle repositioning of me as the fragile, failing sibling. It was all architecture. A prison of perception built to hide a vault. And that was the moment I knew. The real revenge begins now. The silence in my apartment after that realization was not empty. It was a dense, living thing. Thick with the ghosts of 1,000 family moments now, recontextualized as lies. The rain against the window was the only rhythm in a world that had lost its beat. I could smell the faint, damp concrete from the fire escape, the stale coffee in my cup, the lingering scent of the cheap sandalwood candle I'd burned to try and create warmth. Victoria's voice echoed in my memory. Not in her recent, clipped boardroom tones, but from the day after our mother's funeral. We were in the same penthouse, amid the tasteful morning flowers. She'd taken my hands, her eyes glistening with manufactured tears. The estate, it's a mess, Lena. The medical bills were catastrophic. There's nothing left. But I'll take care of you. You're my sister. I had collapsed into her embrace, grateful for her strength, her competence. Now, I saw the scene from a new, horrifying angle, the performance of a master manipulator, laying the cornerstone of my dependency. For days, I moved through my life as a ghost. My job as an archival researcher for a small historical society became a blessed escape, a world of facts and documents where truth was tangible, not a shifting mirage. I would trace the lines of century-old letters, feeling the indentations of sincere emotion, and my own reality would feel like a poorly written fiction. I began my own research. Quiet, methodical, a scholar of my own betrayal. I accessed public records, piecing together the skeleton of our mother's true estate. I found the sold property in the Hamptons, the transferred stock portfolios, all flowing into entities with names that traced back to Victoria's husband's law firm. The scale was breathtaking. It wasn't just my inheritance. It was the rewriting of our family's history, with Victoria as the sole author and beneficiary. My plan formed not in a flash of rage, but in the slow, cold accretion of resolve. A direct confrontation was useless. Victoria was a fortress of social and legal armor. I needed a key. I remembered my mother's old habits, her love for antiquated technology. She'd kept a vintage digital voice recorder to capture her thoughts, her memories of our father. On a desperate hunch, I emptied the box of her costume jewelry. Beneath the layers of glittering paste, my fingers found the familiar rectangular shape. I charged it with a trembling hand, and there, nestled between recordings of her reciting recipes and singing old lullabies, I found it. A conversation dated just 2 weeks before she died. Her voice was weak but clear, threaded with pain and a dawning, terrible clarity. And then Victoria's voice, smooth as polished marble. "You have to understand. Mom, Elena isn't capable. She's too emotional, too fragile. That money would drown her. It's a burden. I'm restructuring everything to protect her, to provide for her. She'll never have to worry. I'll make sure she's taken care of." A soft, pained sound from my mother. "But it's hers, she should know. Knowing would only hurt her." Victoria cut in, her tone shifting from persuasive to final. "It's done. The papers are signed, it's better this way. For everyone." The recording ended with the soft click of a door closing. It was not a smoking gun of explicit theft, but something perhaps more powerful, a confession of intent. A blueprint of the lie, wrapped in the venomous condescension that had poisoned my life. It was psychological dynamite. The war began in shadows and suggestions. I started showing up at places Victoria held dear. Not to speak, just to be seen. I wore my best outfit, a simple but well-cut black dress I'd owned for years, and stood at the periphery of a charity gala she chaired. I saw her notice me from across the room, a flicker of surprise in her blue eyes before it was smoothed into a mask of polite concern. She floated over. A vision in couture, the scent of her exclusive perfume arriving before she did. "Elena," she said, her voice a low murmur. "This is a surprise. Is everything all right?" I met her gaze, allowing none of the old deference to show. Just admiring the artwork, Victoria. And the performance. I let the double meaning hang. A faint line appeared between her brows. The first crack in the facade. I used the recording as a compass, not a weapon. I began to ask careful, informed questions of the family accountant during a chance meeting I engineered, referencing clauses and assets I should have known nothing about. The confusion on his face was confirmation. I could feel Victoria's attention, once benignly neglectful, now focusing on me like a laser. She invited me to lunch at a sleek, understated restaurant where the power brokers whispered deals over seared tuna. "I'm worried about you, Lena," she said, sipping her sparkling water. "You seem different. Stressed. Is it work? Do you need help?" Her concern was a spider's silk, sticky and designed to entrap. "I've just been thinking about Mom a lot lately," I said, my voice steady. "About how things were left. About promises." She put her glass down with a precise click. "The past is a heavy thing to carry. You should let it go. For your own peace. Some things won't stay buried, Victoria," I replied, and watched a glacier shift behind her eyes. The psychological warfare escalated. I began to subtly mirror her language, using the same corporate jargon she wielded like a weapon, reframing my life as a project in restructuring. I sent Chloe, my unwitting betrayer, a genuine, beautifully wrapped vintage scarf, not a designer, but something unique and thoughtful with a note. "For when you tire of last season's trends." It was a seed of dissonance. Chloe, confused, called me. For the first time in years, our conversation wasn't filtered through her mother's narrative. I was kind, remembering details about her life Victoria always forgot. I became a ghost in Victoria's machine, a faint glitch in her perfect system. The breaking point came at the annual board meeting of the Vance Family Foundation, a charity Victoria had founded with our mother's money, my money. I arrived, uninvited. The boardroom was a temple of cold modernism, all glass and steel, overlooking a rain-slicked Manhattan. The other members, CEOs, socialites, fell silent as I entered. Victoria, at the head of the table, went very still. "Elena," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "This is a private meeting. I have a stake in this foundation," I said, my voice carrying in the hushed room. I walked to the empty seat beside her, the one traditionally left for family, and sat. I believe there are questions about its original funding that need to be addressed. Her mask slipped fully then, revealing a flash of pure, terrifying fury. It was gone in an instant, replaced by a chilly smile. We can discuss your concerns privately. After. But I was done with private discussions. As the meeting droned on, I placed the small, unassuming voice recorder on the polished table between us. I didn't press play. I just let it sit there. A black rectangle of potential ruin. Victoria's eyes locked onto it. She recognized it. A tiny, almost imperceptible tremor ran through her perfectly manicured hand. The entire meeting, she was distracted, her responses uncharacteristically brittle. The power in the room had imperceptibly shifted. The predator was now uncertain of the terrain. She cornered me after, in the silent, echoing parking garage. The air smelled of exhaust and damp concrete. "What do you want, Elena?" she hissed, the elegant veneer gone, revealing the raw, desperate creature beneath. "Money. Is that it? A payoff?" I looked at her, this stranger who was my sister, and felt a profound, weary sadness. I wanted my sister. But she died a long time ago. I took out my phone, connected to the recorder via Bluetooth, and let a single sentence play in the cavernous space. "My mother's weak, heartbroken voicey, but it's hers, she should know." Victoria flinched as if struck. "That's nothing," she whispered, but the terror in her eyes betrayed her. "It's a sick old woman's rambling. It's context," I said softly, "and I have the rest. The part where you convince her of my fragility. The part where you outline your protection. It's all here. I've copies in secure places, with instructions that are very, very clear." I took a step closer. "I don't want a payoff, Victoria. I want a reckoning. You will dissolve Chloe's trust fund and restructure it, along with every other asset you stole, into a new, transparent trust in my name. You will resign from the foundation board and recommend me as your successor. You will then tell Chloe, and everyone in your glittering world, the truth, that you lied, that you stole, that the poor Aunt Alana narrative was your creation. You'll ruin us," she spat. "You'll ruin Chloe." "No," I said, my voice finally breaking with the weight of it. "You did that. I'm just presenting the bill. Do this and the recording stays between us. Fight me, and it becomes a podcast, a transcript to every major news outlet, a soundtrack to your social demise. Your choice." I left her there, standing frozen under the fluorescent lights, a elegant statue of crumbling ambition. The final play was not an explosion, but a quiet, inexorable unfolding. I gave her a week. The pressure was internal, a psychological siege. I saw it in the increasingly tense photos on social media, in the rumor of her stepping back for family time. The call came on a bright, clear morning. Her lawyer, and mine, a sharp, discreet woman I'd hired with the last of my savings, had drawn up the papers. Victoria signed them without a word in a bland office suit. The transfer of wealth was one thing. The harder currency was the truth. She gathered her circle at the penthouse, the same dressing room from the video serving as an ironic stage. Chloe was there, confused. Victoria, her face a pale mask of defeat, delivered a halting, humiliating confession. She painted it as a moment of misguided protectiveness that spiraled. But the facts were stark and undeniable. Chloe's face, watching her mother unravel, watching the foundation of her world turn to ash, was a complex portrait of horror, betrayal, and a dawning, awful understanding. She looked at me, truly looked at me for the first time, and I saw the TikTok sneer replaced by a devastating shame. That, perhaps, was the most complete piece of the revenge. I walked out of the penthouse, the legal documents in a simple folder, the digital recorder a weightless ghost in my pocket. The New York air was still thick with city smells, but it felt different. It was mine. The future was an unknown country, scarred but open. The revenge was complete not because she suffered, but because I was free. The narrative was mine again. And sometimes, the quietest settling of accounts echoes the loudest in the chambers of a broken heart.